Hello everyone, this is Brian from Brian Tech. Welcome back. Today, you're going to learn about GitHub APIs. API stands for Application Programming Interface, and it's a great way where you can talk to service like GitHub. With the GitHub APIs, you can pretty much customize and build anything you want. GitHub offers two different types of APIs. One is GitHub REST API. This is based on HTTP URL protocol and is the simplest and most well-known type of APIs. Other one is called GraphQL. It is sort of like JSON schema. This one can be very useful for data analytics and many other things. Now, we'll explain all of this concept later in this video. You'll also get to try out sample REST API call from GitHub and GraphQL call from GitHub. After all, best way to learn something is by doing yourself. With this saying that, without further ado, let's dive in. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching and let's get started. So what is the API and when do you want to use it? API stands for Application Programming Interface. By definition, it is a software interface that defines different ways to talk to computer or a service so user can get the data or manage the data they need. How one defines API is really up to the application service designer or programmer. You'll find many app services decide to abstract away some data call, protect important data through a security token or password, and expose them in different formats. Great! Now you understand what API is. When should you use it? There are different use cases, but here are a few. You can use it to get the data you need from application. You can also use it to update the data you need from application. Also, if you're like a data analyst, you probably want to use it to analyze particular data. And if you're building some custom application, this API calls become an extremely important place to look for. Many technology services you probably know, whether it is Microsoft Azure, Facebook, ServiceNow, or Google Map, pretty much all of them have this API exposed for developers to come in and to build cool stuff. And GitHub is not an exception. Okay, what are GitHub APIs and what can you do with them? With the GitHub APIs, you can directly retrieve or manage the data from GitHub or build a completely separate customized application or service that talks to GitHub. Sounds confusing? Let's look at two fundamental API types that GitHub provides. There are two types of GitHub APIs. One is REST API and other is GraphQL. Let's see what are these and how they're different from each other. What is REST API? Since the very early day of the invention of the internet, which was also called World Wide Web or WWW, at the time, many people want to introduce some conventions and structures around the internet. So one architecture principle that was born during this period is representation, state, transfer, or REST. In essence, it works by transferring resources or data through URI, which stands for Uniform Resource Identifier, where URL is one of them. Format looks like this. You have some URL and you might have additional path to define specific API endpoint. And there are four standard protocols: get, put, post, and delete. REST is very easy to work with, and it can work with any HTTP client such as curl, which is usually built in Linux, Mac, Unix environment, Postman, or Insomnia, which is a tool you will see later. And the library like GitHub AutoKit and GitHub app like Probot are also implemented based on these GitHub APIs. What are GitHub AutoKit and Provat? Basically, GitHub AutoKits are different programming libraries built-in code like Ruby, Objective-C, .NET, and many more. They can be included in your programming languages or project. And Provat is a GitHub app that can help to automate your workflow. Well, although these are not the scope of this video, you can check out my other earlier video about GitHub app to learn more about it. Let's move on to GraphQL. GraphQL is an open source data query and manipulation language, originally invented by Facebook. A lot of companies like GitHub, Pinterest, Intuit, Shopify, and Coursera adopted GraphQL, and it kind of looks like JSON, JavaScript Object Notation format. GraphQL only supports postcall, and it works by calling in somewhat-like hierarchy-based way. For example, you might call an object named user, which might have different properties like name, age, and hobbies. From here, hobbies might contain more data, such as the name of each hobby, time you had that hobby, etc. So you start building your query by starting from top, cascading downward to pick up more nested data. Although there are different tools that support GraphQL, one easy tool to manage calling GraphQL is called Insomnia, which you will see later in this video. Now, you might have this question. Between REST and GraphQL, when should I use one versus another? There's no one right answer. However, you should choose GitHub REST API in most of cases. REST is best for a custom application and the simple data retrieval or management, and is very flexible enough to call exact API endpoint to get the data you want. But if you really need to get some exact data format, maybe because you're trying to analyze data or don't want to call many times, GraphQL might be a better option. But note that GraphQL has a bigger learning curve than REST API. Rule of thumb is to use REST whenever possible. Basically, REST can do what GraphQL can do. There are some special exception cases though, as you will see in next slide. GraphQL also can get quite complicated, and they can result in terrible performance. And because REST API was a standard that came out first and well understood, there are more caching and tools available for REST. Lastly, which might be important for many people, GraphQL has a bigger learning curve than REST API. Okay, but when is the time that you don't want to use REST API, but use GraphQL? It's possible that some APIs are only available through GraphQL. For example, in GitHub, there is a functionality to get mannequin users' data, which is used whenever you want to migrate from some source control management like Bitbucket, GitLab, or even GitHub to GitHub. This mannequin users API is currently only available through GraphQL, though it's subjected to change. In a situation like this, you have no choice but to choose GraphQL. Lastly, you somehow have a need that you need to get exact data format from GraphQL and want to avoid multiple calls. In this case too, GraphQL might be a better option. Finally, we are done with that. Let's jump into how we can start using GitHub API. We'll start by exploring GitHub API documentation. Here is GitHub API Documentation, which you can find from this link shown here. As you can see, you'll find out different information about GitHub API in general. You'll also see it support REST API and GraphQL. Before going any further though, we need to create a personal access token, shortly known as a path, which will pass for both REST API and GraphQL. So what is a personal access token? It's a token associated with a user, and you can grant specific permission for the token. To create it, after you log into GitHub, click top right corner where you can see your user icon. They will show a drop-down menu. Scroll down to find settings. So click that. Once you're in settings, scroll all the way down to find developer settings. You will see few more options, but what we need to select is personal access tokens. Let's create a new token by selecting Generate New Token button. Here, you can give some name for your token, and you can also set an expiration date. It's highly recommended that you should set expiration date and dispose it as soon as you're done with an operation. It's a bad practice to create a permanent token, as that poses security risk. You can select a number of different permissions associated with this token. In my case, I chose repo status, public underscore repo, lead column org, and the lead column user. But it's really up to you to decide what you need. Once you're done, scroll down to create a new token by clicking Generate Token button. Then you will see your token. If you refresh the page or leave there now, you will not be able to get it back. So make sure to copy and save somewhere like Notepad. And if you're performing this for an organization which is behind single sign-on or SSO, make sure to authorize that token for that organization. Cool, we're done creating personal access token. We'll need this later, so keep it somewhere where you can easily remember. Let's move on to start with the GitHub REST API. Starting with GitHub REST API. In GitHub API Documentation, we'll see REST API. When you click it, it will be brought to this GitHub REST API Documentation, which is dos/github.com/en/rest if you're reading in English. You can also search in places like Google or Microsoft Bing with the keywords GitHub REST API to get to this page. Here, you can find a number of different documentation such as basic information on how to use REST API by clicking Guide link. Below that, on the REST API reference, you can find different API endpoints, so you can select based on what you need. For example, let's scroll to find organization. You can find ways to list organization. Now, here's the fun stuff. Let's actually try to make sample REST API call. We'll try to see different repositories owned by user. So I will select repositories and scroll down to find list repositories for user. So this shows how can call this through curl, JavaScript, or GitHub CLI. We'll use a simple curl command. So I can copy the command by clicking this button. And this page shows different arguments I can pass as well as sample response. Here's my terminal, and I will make a call to list repositories for user. First thing I want to do is export GitHub underscore token as an environment variable. I'm using Mac, so this should be same for Linux environment, but the command might be slightly different if you're using Windows, which will likely be through PowerShell. Now I exported my GitHub token. I will create a curl query to list repositories. I will type curl and pass a header, call accept column application slash bnd dot github dot v3 plus JSON, which is specified in documentation. I also need to pass header for token, which is called bearer token. I'll use JSON as content type. Lastly, I'll form a call to list repositories, and I need to add my username. And there you go. Here is a list of all my repositories. That's it. Awesome! Let's try to move on to GraphQL. Starting with GitHub GraphQL. GraphQL was originally found by Facebook because the company wanted an easy way to make a call for its services. Later, it got adopted by many different companies. You can find its official website at graphql.org. And as you can see, you'll see Facebook, GitHub, Pinterest, and many other companies who adopted GraphQL. Let's go back to our GitHub API documentation, but select GraphQL API link this time. General layout is similar to REST API documentation. Under Overview, you can find different ways to get educated about GraphQL. This is a very good documentation to read, so I highly recommend to go through it. However, GraphQL might be a little difficult for somebody who is new to this, so I will help you explaining that. Best way to learn something is by doing it. We can start with the queries, which you will see different query you can call as a top level. So we will start there. But before that, let's start setting up a tool called Insomnia. What is Insomnia? It's a tool widely used by employees in GitHub. It has similar functionality as Postman, but also have a way to call GraphQL, which is what you exactly need. To download it, you can go to testing for free and download the free version of it. Once you download it, installed, and open it, you might find interface similar to this. You can have multiple projects, as you can see from mine, which will have own dashboard. And from there, you can click on top right button to either create a design document, request collection, or import from different files. We'll create a new request collection. And I will give some name, and this can be anything, so feel free to call whatever you want. Here is my collection page. I will select or click plus icon. They will bring a new pop-up window. I will select new request option since I want a new request, and I'll give it some name. As you can see, in your new request, you have a different HTTP method like get, put, post, and delete. But under there, in body, you have an option to select what type of call it is, and you will see GraphQL option. So we will select that. If you do that, your call method will change it to post call, which is only possible way in GraphQL. Now we'll start by defining what is URL. And our URL is https://api.github.com/GraphQL. So although it's not scope of this video, if you're using GitHub Enterprise Server, the host name of a URL will be different, but the path should be almost the same. And that should apply for REST API as well. Moving on, we need to pass some required header for any GraphQL call. Content type is automatically filled in as a JSON, but we need to pass authorization so we can pass bearer token. As a value, type a bearer and space and paste your path token, which you created earlier. Now let's select GraphQL tab again, and we are ready. Making a sample GraphQL call. We are back at GraphQL API Documentation. As we promised, we'll start with the queries. The way it works is that we'll start a query that we are interested in, and we want to get repositories under user. You might get confused whether this is an under user or repository, as you see both. For this, you have to investigate a bit by yourself to get comfortable with this documentation. But not to give it a hard time, I can set is under user, so let's select that. Under user, you'll see a few more things here there. You can see an argument called login, which is type string. That is a required argument. Let's select user, which is a link. That will bring to objects section, where that object, in our case, is user. You'll find more information there. Best way to start, we'll select the field, which are primary types, not object or complete data structures like list. What I mean by primary types, those are things like string or integer. For example, we can choose bio, which is string, and name, which is also string. Other types, like repositories, issues, are more complicated types, so let's not do that now. We are back at GraphQL window. And we'll start by typing query and open and close parentheses. Inside the parentheses, we can enter required argument called field, which has a key called $login, followed by a column. We need to specify type, which is string and exclamation mark. Then after the end of parentheses, we can open and close curly braces. Since we are interested in user object, we can type user and pass login just like that. Now, login is an argument, so we need to pass that. Under that GraphQL body, at the bottom, you'll see another window called query variable. From there, we can pass login argument, which is really the username. So we'll enter curly bracket open and close. Inside there, we can pass login, which is my username. Finally, we can pass name and profile, since those are just string types. And we are done. Let's hit send button to make our first call. Ta-da! Oops, little mistake there. Real life debugging. I'll fix profile to bio. And here we go. But we still need not get to our repositories. So let's go back and select repositories. And there are few fields like affiliations, after, before, etc. We'll use one of them. But let's select repository connection, which is a link. This brings to another object called repository connection, which is a list of our object. You will see edges, nodes, pages info, total count, and total disk usage. Easiest thing to print are fields like total count and total disk usage. But what are edges and nodes? Well, GraphQL is called GraphQL because it consists of edges and nodes, and this have additional information associated with those. But we'll start with total count and total disk usage. Let's go inside the edge, which will bring you to repository edge object, and you'll find another node which will lead you to repository object. Finally, from there, you can find different fields that repository offers. For basic type, we can always print as it is, but if it is complex type, we need a more nested way of calling it. Let's go back to our GraphQL window again. We'll start by typing repositories and let's pass first column 10 as an argument, which means that we want whatever first 10 repository we can get. For total count, we can easily get it, but to get actual repositories, we need to specify a node, which is name, disk usage, is empty, and description. Let's hit send button again to get the information. Awesome. But you can see they're not exactly sorted, so let's try to fix that. When you go back to repositories, you will see order by option, which has a direction and field, so you can pass those. We'll sort by name in ascending order. We're back to GraphQL. We'll pass that, and it will look like this. Once we are done, let's hit send button again. Look at it now. They're sorted. Good job. You just finished your first GraphQL call. And we're all done. In this lesson or video, you're going to learn about REST API, GraphQL, and how you can make those calls through GitHub API. Congratulations. That's it. I hope you like watching this video and be sure to like it. Thanks for watching again and hope you see you next time. Bye bye.